Welcome, Life Sciences. Welcome to another exciting lesson of life science. What are we looking at today? Well, we're following on our series of the gaseous exchange system. We're looking how we breathe, we're looking how we bring in oxygen into the body. And remember, we've looked at the whole concept of photosynthesis, where we made the food, right? We looked at digestion, where we ate the food. We looked at cellular respiration, where we used it. And gaseous exchange, I always tell my class, is the terms and conditions, because all of cellular respiration will only occur if I get in oxygen and if I can get rid of carbon dioxide. So we're looking at those concepts. So if I have a look, let me just get my pen going. If I have a look at this little interesting part that I put on the board at the moment, I want you to think every single time that you just breathe quietly through your nose, you are taking in half a liter of air every single time. I know for me it was quite boggling, right, because it's quite a large amount. But what are we going to focus on this lesson? We're going to actually focus on gaseous exchange. Now, if you have a look at our previous lessons, and I just want to quickly go forward, we looked at the concept of breathing. I even brought in that little model, and we could have looked at how we breathe in air, and we said that breathing was the actual physical bringing air into the lungs and taking carbon dioxide out. And that is not, right, that is not gaseous exchange. So if I give you this diagram of inhalation and exhalation, that is actually not breathing. We often use the word breathing, right, just as the whole concept of bringing air in, taking it out. But what actually happens deep inside my lungs? That is what we're going to look at today. So just before we start, so you have this idea that when we just take oxygen in and when we take oxygen out, we think we're exchanging gases, but we're not. It's just a little, all right, just a little thing that, a little bit of a change of terminology that we need. I'm going to go back to the terminology that's there. When it comes to a gaseous exchange, when it comes to life science, remember always the terms. There are a lot of new terms that you have to be able to understand, you have to be able to use. And as I always say to you, make sure you know what these terms mean. Make sure you understand them and that you are able to use them correctly. So if I say the process of breathing is inhalation, right, and exhalation, getting oxygen in and out of my lungs, what exactly would gaseous exchange be? Now, if I have a look at the concept of gaseous exchange, there's one thing that has to, all right, occur, and it's, if I have a look here, it's the primary function of the lungs involving the transfer of oxygen into the blood. Okay, now when we have a look at this concept, what has to happen is that if I have got, I'm going to draw over here, my lungs over here, the alveoli, and if I've got a blood vessel over here, gaseous exchange means that gases must exchange over a surface. Right, so when we have gaseous exchange, that the gases, there must actually be something that they cross over. So when we breathe in and when we breathe out, the gases don't change over anything. I'm just getting oxygen in and I'm taking carbon dioxide out. So when we look at the process of gaseous exchange, the oxygen and the carbon dioxide must cross over a surface. And that links back really importantly to our requirements of a gaseous exchange system. It must be moist, it must be thin, it must be permeable, or it must have a good transport. So when we go back to that section, these are all the requirements that are going to come into place. All right, so guys, let's start with this whole concept. Now, this little concept that I've put at the top here is quite important. And what do I mean by a concentration gradient? I mean that if, for example, oxygen will move, if I have a high amount of carbon or oxygen on one side, and on the other side, I have a low, all right, oxygen concentration. So basically, I've got a hill. So I'm at top of the hill, and I want to get down to the bottom of the hill. And how do I do it? I always say to the kids in my class, I would rather kick you down the hill than have to push you back up the hill, because that is so much easier for me to do. So that's how oxygen and carbon dioxide are going to move. We want them to move from a high concentration to a low concentration. Okay, so how does it occur? So when I breathe air in, when I inhale, the oxygen moves into my alveoli. And remember what the alveoli is. They're a balloon. So when they move in, what does my alveoli do? It blows out, all right? It like once it expands, the word is it just gets bigger, all right? The balloon it fills out, and we have this much larger space. So the oxygen inflates. That's the word I'm getting to. All of a sudden, I couldn't think of the word there. The oxygen moves into the alveoli. And this is the oxygen over here. Now remember, this layer over here is nice and moist, and that is where the oxygen diffuses into. Also, there is only a single layer of cells. So that is also going to make it nice and easy. Now remember this concentration gradient. So if oxygen is high on this side, there's a lot of it on this side, it will move from a high concentration to a low concentration. And that low concentration is the blood capillary that is surrounding the alveoli. So when we have oxygen over here, that's what I'm saying, the oxygen moves from the alveoli into the blood capillary. So as you can see over there, so we've just moved it from the alveoli into the blood capillary. Now, what has happened over here, and we're going to see just now, I want to explain it in a different way, is we're going to have carbon dioxide come into, right, the capillary from the lungs, but I'm going to show you that just now. So now we have the oxygen, right, that pops into here. So oxygen goes into my capillaries. How does it travel? Okay, so oxygen's in my lungs. Oxygen needs to get into the blood. Now we have a problem. Blood is water, and oxygen don't like the water at all. All right, oxygen doesn't like water, but blood is water. So now we have a problem, but we can solve it. How? Blood gets carried in taxis. All right, blood gets carried in a taxi. There's a carrier that picks it up. Now, what are those carriers? Do you see these red little discs over here? These red little discs are called red blood cells. Do you see this over here? Now, inside this red blood cell, there's an iron pigment called hemoglobin. Now, oxygen and hemoglobin are besties, all right? This is how oxygen is going to be transported. So instead of going into the blood, as the red blood cell goes through, all right, so we have this iron pigment, that's why our blood is red, and oxygen and hemoglobin are like, hey dudes, we're together, and they form this compound called oxyhemoglobin, and that is how oxygen, right, is going to now go to the cells. So oxygen moved into the lungs, from the lungs into the blood, in the red blood cell, the erythrocyte, and on its way is it going to the cells. Why does it need to go to the cells? That's why I need oxygen, for cellular respiration. Okay, so here we start our first part of gaseous exchange. Now I just want you to have a look over here. When we look at this concept, I think you would have done it when we did biochemistry, right? Anemia. If you don't have iron, all right, if you don't have iron in your diet, you cannot make the iron of the red blood cells. And that could have a problem with you breathe very heavy because you're not getting the oxygen in, you're tired, you're fatigued, right? So guys, iron, spinach, vegetables, beans, all right, all of those, soya, anything, try and get those iron levels up so that your red blood cells nice and healthy so that I can get my oxygen around. So now I go here and now get to my cells, and I've got these little mitochondria, okay? And what happens with these mitochondria? I need oxygen. Now, if you have a look over here, we're going to see the concentration gradient again. So here my capillary comes, it's filled with oxygen. My cells, low oxygen. So what do? I move from a high concentration to a low concentration, and I move into the cells. But have a look over here. In the cells themselves, they are high carbon dioxide. Right? Carbon dioxide and oxygen don't get in. So oxygen comes in from a high to a low, and carbon dioxide, no, we can't stay together here. Carbon dioxide moves from a high concentration to a low concentration in the blood. Guys, look what we have. The arrows go in different directions. What have we just done? Gas. Oopsie, that's not supposed to be an S. Let's just erase that quickly. Otherwise, it looks like a lightning bolt. Gas exchange. Right, where have we done gas exchange now? At cell level, right, in the tissues. So the oxygen came to the cells, moved from a high to a low in the cells. The cells had undergone cellular respiration, and their carbon dioxide went from a high to a low. Now, where is the carbon dioxide? It must go back to the lungs. So what does it do? It needs to go into the blood. Now, carbon dioxide has a few more choices how it's going to be transported than the red blood cells. Red blood cells just take oxygen. So what we have over here, I want you to have a look. There are 3 different ways in which carbon dioxide can move. Now, the first way, as it is with there was a little bit with the oxygen as well, a little bit of it dissolves in the blood plasma, just a little bit. Now, this is the biggest word. I know when I wrote this on the board in my class, my kids were like, wow, ma'am, that's a really long word. Yes, it is. So when I pick up, all right, when I pick up oxygen, I take oxygen to the cells. I'm a taxi, remember? And I drop it off. So then, don't you think I must rather pick another passenger up? Yes, I do. Right? So when I drop someone off, I can pick somebody else up. So I've dropped off oxygen. Now I pick up carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide also joins with a part of the hemoglobin. Listen to this lovely long word. Carbaminohemoglobin. And you have to be able to spell it. So how's carbon dioxide traveled? Carbaminohemoglobin. Lovely big word. Now the next way, right, in which the carbon dioxide travels, and this is actually most of it, about 65% is. When the carbon dioxide comes into the blood plasma, it actually forms an acid called carbonic acid. All right. And guys, if we know something about acid, acid is not good. Because why? It changes our pH. And we know in our body, homeostasis, things must be a specific way. And and pH is one of those things that we have to keep in balance. So every time I breathe, all right, and I get oxygen and carbon dioxide especially, that means my body balance challenges. And that's quite correct. So what happens is, our body has what we call buffers, all right? Buffering. Buffering, not like when we're waiting for something to happen on the TV, or when we're waiting for something to happen on our phone. Buffering simply means that I make an acid, I add hydrogen to it, and all that I do is I change it from being an acid, which is detrimental to me, to something called bicarbonate ions. It's no longer an acid, it has a neutral pH, and there we go on our way. Okay, so now Now I'm from the cells. Gaseous exchange has occurred in my tissues. I'm now carbon dioxide, and where am I going? I'm going back to the lungs. So where do we go? We go back to the alveoli. So carbon dioxide is traveling, gets to the lungs, and what do I have? I have a high concentration of carbon dioxide in my blood. So where does carbon dioxide move? From the blood capillaries into the alveoli. And remember, what was happening to the oxygen? The oxygen was moving from the alveoli to the blood. Look at my arrows again. They're in opposite directions. What am I doing? I'm exchanging gases, right? Gas exchange. So gaseous exchange is going to occur in the alveoles. I'm going to take it to the tissues. It's going to occur in the tissues, and then it's got to come back again. So each time, as I said to you, it must occur over a particular surface. Okay, guys, that's all we have time for now. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.